Hello friends, and welcome to Escaping the Mouse with your host, me, Breck Roll. Okay, so I was originally going to go up and try and unload one of the pods today, but they need kind of a day warning to do so, and I can't do it tomorrow, I can't do it Sunday because they're closed on Saturday and Sunday. We've learned that, and apparently they know that now too. So I have an appointment on Monday to go pick up one of my pods. I'm targeting specifically the second one because I need to have my birth certificate and social security card in order to get my driver's license updated and to get a job. So that's important, and that's all in the second pod. So we want to get that one first. Ultimately, I want to get both of them unloaded and moved down to the storage facility here in Waco. So, but obviously I can't do that all at once, and I don't really want to pay them to bring the stuff down. Like I said, I just want to separate myself from them as quickly as possible. So that begins on Monday. But that also means that I don't really have a whole lot to do today. So we're going to do something a little bit different. When I first arrived in Waco a few weeks ago, one of the first things I did is just kind of look at the maps to see what was around. I was primarily looking for where grocery stores were and where banks were and where food was and the stuff that I was going to need for the first few days while I had nothing in the apartment. One of the first things I saw, though, kind of caught my attention. I said, okay, that I don't need that right now, but that's something I'm going to definitely want to go check out, and we're going to do that today. Yeah, I'm stealing a page from Jordan again. We're going to do a little tourist vlog. Here in Waco, they have a National History Museum dedicated to mammoths that have been discovered in the area. Apparently, there's a mammoth dig site. Now, this isn't a woolly mammoth that you think of from all the Ice Age movies. No, this is a slightly different species called a Columbian mammoth. But it's basically the same animal. It's a little bit bigger. It's just adapted to deal with warmer climates like we have here in the southern end of the United States. So we're going to go visit that. Let's go check it out. So this is the Waco Mammoth National Monument, which is a couple miles north of Waco. The property itself occupies about 107 acres of territory, but only 2 of those acres have been excavated. During the last ice age, somewhere between 50 and 65,000 years ago, a flash flood wiped out an entire herd of 23 mammoths, as well as several other species, and buried them in sediment for us to find all these years later. Now, when most people think about mammoths, they think of the woolly version from the Ice Age movies. But here in Texas, it didn't get as cold during the Ice Age as it did when you approached the poles. As a result, the mammoths were better fed and didn't have to be as woolly as their northern cousins. And because food was more plentiful, they grew bigger. A full-grown male Columbian mammoth could be 14 feet tall at the shoulder and weigh nearly 20,000 pounds. So according to legend, in about 1978, 2 gentlemen, Paul Barron and Eddie Buffkin, were walking along the Bosque River looking for arrowheads and fossils. And to their surprise, they saw a huge bone sticking out of the side of the ravine. They quickly excavated it and took it over to Baylor University for identification, and it was identified as the femur bone of a Columbian mammoth, an extinct species of mammoth that lived in the Pleistocene epoch that ranges from about 2.5 million years ago to about 12,000 years ago. This time period was filled with multiple ice ages separated by slight warming periods, and it all ended about 12,000 years ago. So typically with mammoths, they'll travel in small herds for safety, but the herds are usually made up of juveniles and females. Because generally when a male becomes a certain age, they start becoming a little bit aggressive and they tend to get kicked out of the herd. So that was one of the things that surprised him early on, is that the find included one large male. And they speculated a lot what caused that, and they're thinking that maybe it was breeding season and the male was hanging out with the herd, or it could have just been they were just all looking for water together in the Bosque River. But whichever the case, you look at the bones, you look at the way the find is laid out, it's clear that this large animal was something knocked it over. Because this is not just an animal that fell over and died. This animal tried its best to stay up. You look at it, the left rear leg is splayed out in an odd direction. The right rear leg is splayed out in a weird direction. The left front leg has been crushed underneath the body. The right front leg is hanging out at an odd angle. And the animal's just lying on its side. That's definitely evidence that something big came down and knocked it over. And, what's going to knock over a 20,000 pound animal but a flash flood? Now, you may remember that earlier I mentioned that in addition to mammoths dying in this flash flood, they found several other species. And this is one of those now. This is actually a camel. Yeah, that's right. There were camels in North America back then. Just slightly larger than the ones we know now, and there's a lot of speculation whether they had humps or not. You don't have to have a hump apparently to be a camel, but they were wondering why it is that the camel would be hanging out with the mammoths, and they kind of figured that it was probably because the mammoths provided protection. The camel is an herbivore just like the mammoths are, so neither of them are a threat to each other. And if you got a big friend that weighs 20,000 pounds and has spiked horns that can defend you and will defend their babies the way they defend you, it makes sense to do that. And so, like I said, not just mammoths died in this incident. This was a camel. Additionally, they found evidence of a saber-toothed kitten, actually. They found just the tooth itself. In fact, it was right at the edge of where they've been doing the excavating, so they're really curious to go further into the rock wall and see if they can find the rest of this cat. But this was like a kitten, and they found just the tooth, and it was about 2 inches long, and that went into a research facility, so they had like a replica of that you could look at, and that's what you're seeing right there. So this was a lot bigger, a lot more interesting than I thought it was going to be. You look at this on the map, it just seems like just kind of a little thing that they haven't really done a whole lot with. But it was actually really interesting. It did do this. I spent a couple hours back here and it was worth the time. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did, because that was a lot of fun. But it brings us to the end of another episode. So as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time on Escaping the Mouse. Good night.